Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Bondi. I'm here with the Nevada Science Center, and behind the camera today is Becky Hall. We are the Director of Research and the Director of Education, respectively. Becky will be on screen here in a little bit. So from here at Valley Fire, it's my pleasure to introduce our special guest today, Ranger Kayla. And so she's going to take it away and tell you a little bit about the science of the Valley Fire State Park.
All right. Hi. So as stated, my name is Kayla. I work here for Valley Fire State Park. To give you an idea of where we're at, so we are in the southwestern portion of the United States, specifically in the state of Nevada. And as you can see, this park is very much a desert. We are part of the Mojave Desert. So in the wintertime, we can sometimes see temperatures in the mid-20s, but what we're most known for is our hot temperatures reaching almost 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. So we're going to take some time and look at a few of the things that you might see on a trip here to the park, starting with something that might be, actually is definitely unexpected, which is fossilized coral. So this fossilized coral is in limestone. If you come to the park and you see rocks that look greenish gray, those are, assuming it's the limestone, it's the limestone rocks. So about 500 million years ago, this place was actually covered in water. Now, obviously it's very different now, but we didn't go straight from an ocean to a desert. There was millions of years in between. And at some point during those millions of years, this place was also forested. So just like we have evidence of the oceanic history here, we also have evidence of our forested history here in the park. So this is a piece of petrified wood. Here in the park, we actually have huge logs, so like basically the full tree form of this, and it's actually really heavy. And it's heavy because it is not wood anymore. This is straight up all rock. So typically when you get a tree that falls over, different microorganisms, fungus, bacteria, little creatures, they start breaking it down and going through the decaying process. But with petrified wood, what happens instead is that plant gets covered up with sediment, which blocks out the oxygen that those microorganisms need to break down the tree. So then what happens? You get water flowing through the cells and through the tree itself, and in that water is dissolved minerals. Those minerals get into the tree's cells, take the tree's shape, and over time what you have is a tree that more or less turns into a rock that is tree-shaped, which is pretty cool. So there's lots of these throughout the park. We have a specific trail that's the Petrified Logs Trail that people can take to go on a walk. We have quite a few trails here as well. Right now we're standing at our east entrance. Near our east entrance is a rock called Elephant Rock that looks like an elephant that people are excited about. So definitely look that up. Now, we don't really have trees here anymore. In fact, the closest thing throughout most of the park that you're going to get, well, big trees, closest thing you're going to get to your idea of a tree in the park is probably going to be the Creosote Bush. It's a really popular, well-known plant in the Mojave Desert. This is just the end of a branch. So throughout the park, we've got a really great diverse range of geologic history, but also within each plant, there's a lot of diversity there too. So looking at this plant itself, if you see these little black dots, are they focused in okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So those are actually little communities of bacteria. So this plant supports little bacterial communities. Those bacterial communities help supply nutrients to the plant, so it's a really good symbiotic relationship. And then other creatures use this plant as well. This little spiky ball that you see here, so the plant actually made that, but inside of that, it's probably already hatched and climbed out now, but what happened was there was a fly that laid an egg on this plant, and then the plant grew up over the egg to make what's called a gall. There's lots of different types of gall flies out there. This to me is super interesting because so the fly that lays this egg, it will eat fungus, and the fungal spores end up inside its ovipositor, or the part of the body that lays the eggs. So when the egg is laid, it's coated in those fungal spores that then grow up around the egg inside this gall and supply food to the fly before it comes out. So lots happening just on this one branch here. Other creatures use creosote bush here too. Probably our most popular desert creature out here is the bighorn sheep. And we have a bighorn sheep horn here. So Creosote bush is one of the plants that bighorn sheep will eat. They are herbivores. Here in Valley Fire State Park, we have one of the healthiest populations of bighorn sheep. In fact, sometimes the National Department of Wildlife will come out and will actually transport sheep to other areas where their populations might be dwindling or need some help. So if you see the males have these really big horns on their head, and these grow throughout their life. So they're not like antlers that are made of bone and fall off. They're made of the same thing that your hair and your fingernails are made out of, called keratin. So they're growing throughout their life, and you can actually tell how old a bighorn sheep is based on the more pronounced rings in the horn. So if you look at this one, we'll say this is 1 year, 2 year, really great growth here, it looks like 3 years. And then, so this sheep was at least, we'll say 3 to 5 years old. But we also notice that as their horns are growing, they get into their range of vision and they will knock off the tip so that they can see better out the side. Bighorn sheep, they'll live to be anywhere between 9 and 15 years old, with the females living a little bit longer. Best place to see them here is by our campgrounds and at our visitor center, where we've actually put up a big water guzzler for them to help them out when it does get too hot. So people love coming here to see the sheep. They're one of our big hits. Nowadays, when people come to see the sheep, it's more for entertainment, for pictures, just to view nature. But the sheep played a very different role for human history back in like 400 to 1300 AD, and even farther back as well, because a very long time ago, when people were coming to this area, they were coming from the east over there, traveling through the park, and they were coming here specifically to hunt. This place, like I said, it gets to be about 120 degrees in the summer sometimes, Fahrenheit. So not really a great place to live, and especially because there is not a lot of water here. So back then they would come to hunt, and just like we have evidence of the ocean that was here, the forest that was here, we have the plants and animals that are here now. We also have evidence of the humans that were here long ago. So the humans that came were the ancestral Puebloans, and they made what we call petroglyphs on some of the rocks. We notice petroglyphs closest to things that we call tanks, which are basically just places where when it does rain, water will collect there, and it does supply a good source of water. So it makes sense that we would see evidence of humans where they could find water out here. So in these petroglyphs, you can see there's bighorn sheep petroglyphs, but there's also some symbols that we don't totally know what they mean. Like this wheel-like symbol here. They found that symbol in other parts of the desert Southwest. As far as what it means, it's hard to tell. So as symbols change over the years, they can change in meaning. Like if we were to show an ancestral Puebloan the Wi-Fi symbol, they probably would not know what that symbol means because they lived a very different life from us. There's also this symbol here called the atlatl. It was a tool that helped them throw spears. So we can figure out some of the things that they were using to hunt these sheep here. Now, those petroglyphs are carved into what we call desert varnish. So we have a little rock sample here. So this is a sample of sandstone. If I flip it this way, you can see that gorgeous red sandstone that we are known for. It gets that red color because of the different minerals that are inside the rock. So for the red sandstone, like what you see behind me, there's a lot of iron in there. On the northern end of our park, we get colors from pink to purple to yellow. It's absolutely beautiful, and all these gorgeous stripe formations. The purple color that you see, the pink and purple, there's a lot of manganese in the rock there that gives it that color. So flipping back to this side, the type of material that the ancestral Puebloans would have carved into, this black stuff on the rock, that is called desert varnish. And it's actually a type of rust, basically. So it's still a little bit debated on what it is exactly, but generally people believe that it is microorganisms that are on the rock, and what they're doing is they're oxidizing the minerals from the rock. So in places where there's different types of minerals in the rock, you can get different colors of desert varnish. Now, it takes a very long time for desert varnish to build up. So like the petroglyphs that you saw in that picture and that are throughout the park, some of those are about 1,700 years old. So in that time, desert varnish has not grown on top of them again. So definitely if you come to the park, make sure that no one is vandalizing this because it will be there forever, more or less. So Other symbols that you might have seen carved into that picture, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's a tortoise. So bighorn sheep we're known for out here. They're one of our most popular desert creatures. We also have desert tortoise. Sad to say, it's common to see the bighorn sheep and other creatures. It's not super common to see the tortoises. There's a lot of them out here, but tortoises actually spend most of their lives underground. So like most desert creatures, they are made to live in the desert. They handle it really well. That doesn't mean that they like all the parts of the desert. So the desert heat, they try to avoid as much as they can. So trying to see, I know it's hard to see over there. I'm pretty sure there's a tortoise hole, maybe. I don't know that you'll get it on camera, but I see like a big hole under a bush. So
Oh, I can't.
no.
Oh, it's like, yeah.
Right, like you see it, right?
It's hard to point out. Right there.
I've not gone over to specifically investigate, but I'm like, it looks promising. So, so we do have desert tortoises here. Now, if you do come and see a tortoise, definitely make sure to keep your distance and keep your hands to yourself. One way that tortoises try to scare away predators is by voiding their bladder. Now, it's super gross to us, but for the tortoise, it could mean losing their water supply. And lately, we haven't seen rain in about 6 months, so it's going to be hard for them to replenish that. So yeah, tortoises are here. We'll also show, so another thing that you want to be careful about when you're visiting a place like this, so, you know, being respectful to animals, if you do find cool things, you know, like the coral or the petrified wood, definitely take a look, take pictures, but leave them where you found them so we can preserve this place. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about regarding keeping places like this safe and healthy is something called cryptobiotic soil. So I have a picture of it, and we're standing with it all around us. But cryptobiotic soil, it is the crusty, crunchy looking soil on top of the sand there. Oh, very good. Up a little bit. Okay. So that within that, there's a bunch of microorganisms. We've got algae, fungus, bacteria, and what it's doing is it's helping trap water in the soil, in the sand there, helps the plants out. It helps prevent soil erosion, and it takes a long time for that to be made as well. Not as long as the desert varnish that we saw, but in good conditions, let's say you walk on some cryptobiotic soil, you crush it up, you leave this flat spot where it's now destroyed. In like perfect conditions, it can be restored in maybe 5 to 10 years, but it can take up to 50 years for that soil to be brought back. So definitely make sure if you're in a place like this, we say tiptoe around the crypto, and make sure that we're preserving the land. So the last thing I'll say before I transfer it over to Josh so he can talk about some of his amazing research he's done here. Probably, in my opinion, one of the coolest things that we have here at the park is fossils that are from dinosaurs. So when you're walking around, be careful where you step, but also take a look at where ancient creatures used to step. So in parts of the sandstone here, we actually have dinosaur tracks. So here, do you see it okay? Okay. Right, so we have a toe here, and a toe here. So this is one that we removed from a dinosaur trackway here at the park. So now, to talk more about the super cool paleontology that goes on here, we have Josh.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you for sharing all the treasures of the park. So Valley Fire is a special place for me and for the Nevada Science Center. I've been working and doing research here on and off for almost 2 decades now. And so Valley Fire was actually one of the very first places, if not the first place in the state of Nevada, where we were actually able to describe dinosaurs and all the critters that lived alongside dinosaurs. So we have a little sliver of Cretaceous age rocks that are about 100 million years old. So when we look off to the off to the west of the park, off to the west of Las Vegas, there were great big mountains over where California sits today, and rivers draining those mountains off to the east towards Utah. And so this little sliver of rock here in Nevada records where some sediment got ponded and preserved the animals that lived alongside of those riverways coming off of the mountains in California. So we have fish. So for those of you who go fishing, we have lots of scales of garfish. So these are kind of primitive like fish that have these enamel covered scales. these little rhombohedrons. So they're kind of cool, but they're not from the western United States today. You find them mostly in the Mississippi drainage. Lungfish teeth. So lungfish aren't really an animal you think of even from North America, but if any of you are from the southern hemisphere, there's still a couple of species of lungfish around today. So these are fish not too distantly related to vertebrates or to terrestrial vertebrates, but ate clams and snails and things like that. Also lived along our waterways were ancestors of our desert tortoise. So we got lots and lots of turtle shell. And so this is a 100-million-year-old piece of turtle shell. So you can see the little bumps on it. Based upon just those little bumps on this little fragment, we can name the species down to, it's called Naomycale speciosa. Don't worry, there won't be a quiz at the end of this. But turtles, we could, in the prehistory, we can identify them based upon what we call the ornaments on their shells. So this one's closely related to the line that goes to tortoises and to pond turtles. We also get ancestors of soft-shelled turtles, and then we also have a new species of turtle that we haven't quite finished describing yet. Everyone loves turtles, right? And munching on those turtles were crocodiles. So in this vial, maybe I'll try to pour them out. Is that a good idea or no? Just leave them in the vial.
You can hold them up. Just, yeah. I guess your dark shirt would help.
So we have about 3 or 4 different teeth from crocodiles. See them? How is that? So kind of those peg-like teeth. I have found some turtle shell that has crocodile tooth marks in them. Presumably the turtle survived that. And we also find other victims of the crocodiles in these weird rocks. So these rocks are called coprolites. Some of you probably already know what that means. For those of you who don't, this is fossil poop. And so if you look real close, kind of these horizontal lines, those are what we call sphincter striations. So that's how we know that the muscles of the rear end of the crocodile squeeze this thing out. And when you look at cross sections of them, you can actually see bits and pieces of what the animal ate. So some of these we have bits and pieces of turtle shell. Some of these we have little garfish scales sticking out of them. That probably wasn't too fun when the crocodile was passing those. But we know that the crocodiles were eating those things based upon what they leave in their scat. Along the waterways, like Ranger Kayla was talking about, there used to be trees in Valley of Fire millions of years ago. 100 million years ago, this was a common tree or tree fern that lived along the waterways of southern Nevada and Utah during this period of time. So these are all kind of the intertwined, they're called pseudo trunks of this tree fern. We've also found leaves of magnolias, leaves of ferns. And so it was actually kind of a lush environment where the dinosaurs were roaming around here in southern Nevada, again, 100 million years ago. So to the dinosaurs, we have found ancestors of tyrannosaurs called tyrannosauroids. These were not great big Tyrannosaurus rex-like animals. These were when tyrannosaurs were still kind of little raptor-like animals. We have found pieces of great big allosaurs. So allosaurs, famous dinosaur from the Jurassic, their descendants are still hanging around during the early Cretaceous and are the largest carnivores during this period of time. So we have bits and pieces of them from here in Valley of Fire as well. The biggest animals out here were probably the sauropod dinosaurs. So we have titanosaurs have been found out here. We also have primitive plant eaters. So we're going to be naming a couple of new species. Becky's going to step around here in a few minutes to talk about one of them. But a little plant eater about yay tall we're currently describing right now from the rocks out here in Valley of Fire State Park. And so Valley of Fire is actually going to produce 2 new species from the state of Nevada of dinosaurs. And obviously a turtle. In addition to that, we also have ankylosaurs, which are the armored dinosaurs. And I think that's the list of dinosaurs until I let Becky take over here in a minute. Our most recent find out here is this bone. So it's kind of a weird shaped bone. It's got this big clunky end down here. It's kind of delicate. This was found right before COVID hit and the whole world kind of got turned upside down. So this was our most recent find from this year. Some dinosaur experts from back east say that maybe this is a foot bone. So that'd be a great big foot, right? This thing is almost as long as my arm. But there were dinosaurs that big. So when you're talking about dinosaur anatomy, you have to keep in mind there are things that are enormous during this period of time. So this is still a story. We're working on researching it right now. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some new info about that. Now, I'm going to hand the reins over to Becky now so she can talk about our other potentially new species of dinosaur.
Just gave you a preview. Thank you, Kayla, for giving us the beginning of it, of our tour here today. So today, I'll be talking about my thesis research, which is another new species out here at the Valley of Fire called the Hadrosaur. So they're relatives of iguanodons. And these dinosaurs that we're talking about lived 100 million years ago. So they're not in the bright red rocks of the Aztec sandstone that Kayla was talking about. These are in the backcountry here at the Valley of Fire State Park, where we find Cretaceous rocks and get our dinosaur bones from. So hadrosaurs are little plant eaters, or I shouldn't say little, but plant eaters, like the cows of the Cretaceous. Lots of plant material they would have been eaten. So I've been working on this project for the past few years, and we have nicknamed it. Like we said, we get to name this new species of dinosaurs, but for the nickname so far, it's not official. It's called the Pyrosaurus because we're out here at the Valley of Fire. We'll see if it sticks. Here's just one of the bones that we brought back from the lab. Is that good? See it? What do you think that would be? So it's a piece of the backbone or a vertebrae. So we find a lot of these. They're really robust. So they stay in the rock record a little bit longer, and they had backbones from the base of their skulls to the tips of their tails. So many, many, many pieces of backbone. So we have a whole bunch of backbones, but here's just one of them from this dinosaur. Like I mentioned, they're plant eaters, so herbivores. So they had huge dental batteries that had hundreds of teeth in them to grind up all that plant material. And here's just a portion of that. Is that good? Can you see it? Of their teeth. So another evidence of who the bones belong to. So these big plant eaters, hadrosaurs, grazing the riverbanks, eating all this vegetation. So I'll send it, if you guys want to come back on this side. Josh, you want to come back on this side? Yeah, I will. And then we'll shoot it back to you, Ralph, and then we can take some Q&A.
I'm going to just jump right into the questions because I know we have you guys for about 10 more minutes, and we're going to try and answer as many questions as possible. As you can imagine, we have hundreds and hundreds of students and teachers from around the world here who messaged us various questions, and we're just going to kind of get right into it. So there were a number of questions regarding bighorn sheeps. They want to know, are bighorn sheep extinct or are they still around?
They are still around. We've seen them by our visitor center pretty much every day since March. Sometimes we see up to like 35 at a time. They're pretty much still here.
Okay, so they're still around. So I know there was a number of people asking about bighorn sheep. So we have a number of questions from our friends at the Adult Daycare Center of Henderson, and they want to know what kind of animals might you see in the park besides bighorn sheep?
Yeah, so they're one of our most common. Another common animal, people think they're chipmunks. They look a lot like chipmunks. They're called antelope ground squirrels. They're adorable, they're tiny, running around on the ground. You might see large black birds. They could be ravens or turkey vultures. Again, there's the tortoise. We have a venomous lizard called a Gila monster. And also lots of different types of lizards, so desert iguanas, chuckwallas, and then many other very long-tailed little lizards that scurry around. And that's just, there's more than that. We also get a lot of insects and arachnids, so there are scorpions here, there are tarantulas. It's rare to see one, so don't worry. We also get a lot of snakes. The one that most people think of when they think of coming out here is the rattlesnake. So again, we have a lot of them. You're not likely to see one, but if you do, it's actually a pretty cool thing. So, so yeah.
Okay, rattlesnakes, you guys heard it first. Rattlesnakes and spiders and scorpions. So we have some more questions. I'll go ahead and just jump right in. What is the favorite part of each of your jobs?
Yeah, Kayla, you start with that.
Oh gosh, there's so many favorite parts. Like on one hand, just being able to be out here every day and see the wildlife. But then also getting to show people that wildlife. So I'm bringing people out who have never seen a place like this and then answering their questions, teaching them about it. So it's not just me out here by myself enjoying it, but letting inviting everybody else to join in too.
That's awesome. And that brings me to their next question. How many visitors? Oh, yes, my apologies. Josh and Becky, what is your favorite part of your jobs?
So for my job, being a paleontologist, I also enjoy sharing it with others and educating people. So I like to share my research. I like to get others involved and others excited about science and fossils. And I like being able to collaborate with our state parks and other scientists and interpreters and people who all have the same interests, and maybe get some new interested people. And then Josh?
I'll echo what they both said. The coolest part is my job is I get to come out, go hiking, go camping, and that's work.
Awesome parts of your jobs. How many visitors estimated do you guys get at the Valley of Fire every year?
The last number that I heard about was there was a year where we saw like 800,000 people. So we get a lot of visitors.
That is super interesting. And we have a question where people wanted to know, is there a way that they could volunteer to help clean up the Valley of Fire?
Oh, yes, that would be fantastic. You would actually talk to me, who would help organize that. There's lots of projects we can do here. So actually next month, there is an Eagle Scout, a local Eagle Scout who's bringing some kids out to do a planting behind the visitor center. But yeah, if you want to set up some type of cleanup or project, definitely get in touch and we'll try to make something happen.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys have like an email, general email you could give me, I'll embed it into the video at this point and people will see that. So someone wants to know, is this a good place, in your opinion, to view the October blue moon, like a full blue moon?
Yes, which actually speaking of, so we have a full moon hike that night. It is reservation only, so please check our website, our Facebook page for the event to sign up first because we only have so much space. But this place for that night would be a good place. That being said, the park itself does close at sunset. So unless you're here for an event, it is technically illegal for you to be out here. However, thankfully, we also have campgrounds. So if you wanted to come see the moon, see the stars, camping would be a safe, legal way to do it.
That sounds awesome. There are a number of students who are asking, what is the biggest fossil that has ever been found at the Valley of Fire?
The biggest fossil that's ever been found here in Valley of Fire State Park. This one that I showed you just a moment ago is pretty dang close to the biggest, but the biggest bone that we've ever actually discovered here was actually part of Becky's dinosaur. Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, the femur, right? So it's kind of hard to describe where we find the bones from my hadrosaur. When I say my hadrosaur, it's just because that's what I'm researching. It comes in these really hard blocks of sandstone. And you can find the dinosaur bones because it kind of has a different color to the rock around it. So we were out going to the site and we were out looking for more pieces that have weathered out of the sandstone to collect and to add to the dinosaur parts that we have. And we're looking for, smaller pieces that we found, vertebrae. And then we're sitting there having lunch, about ready to pack up our day. And someone was eating their lunch sitting on the femur or the leg bone of the hadrosaur. So it's big, and it took us a team of about 10 and creating a stretcher to haul it out of the backcountry. So we have it in our lab now and researching that. So that was by far the biggest bone. But the most complete dinosaur we found was actually the one that's the size of a small dog. So not all dinosaurs were huge. So the most complete dinosaur was actually the one that was the size of a small dog.
Yeah. Well, there's a follow-up question where they wanted to know, once you find a fossil or a bone, what do you guys do next with it?
Once you find a fossil or a bone in the field, you have to make sure you have the proper tools with you. If you don't have the proper tools, the best thing you can do is leave it alone, because as soon as you disturb that fossil, it's going to become unstable in its environment. So number one, make sure you have the right tools. If you do, usually the first thing we do is we apply special glues to it that holds it together. And then if it's just an isolated bone or a tooth, we just pick it up, pop it in a Ziploc bag like your school lunch is probably in, and bring it home. If it's something big like what Becky was talking about, or like this bone that we just showed you, what we usually have to do is a technique that's been done for hundreds of years in paleontology, and that's making a plaster jacket. So you just soak burlap, strips of burlap into plaster of Paris, and build kind of like a jacket around the bone, like if you broke a bone at home, your doctor might make. And that holds the bone together till we get back to the lab. And then under controlled circumstances, we can remove the surrounding sediment, make sure the bone is stable.
And I'll add that me and Josh are researchers in the park. So the park has given us permission. So they give us a permit. So if you were ever to find a fossil out here, whether it be a trackway or a dinosaur bones, or you think of it, first thing you want to do is contact Ranger Kayla so she can confirm it. So everything stays in the park. We want to preserve it for everyone, or even for researchers, so we know we're finding new discoveries or new animals. And we always will have you involved in that process if that's something that you're interested in.
What would be the best time for, obviously when things open up again, but what would be the best time for students and classes and families to visit the park?
Yeah, so I would recommend during the cooler parts of the year. When it gets too hot, it actually is dangerous to be out here hiking. So no matter what time of the year you come, definitely bring a lot of water and some snacks. But so we are about an hour northeast of Vegas. Not sure if I mentioned that, so it's kind of about where we are. Usually we start getting busier and busier around October, so this time, and we stay pretty busy through like into April. And it's our busy times because it's also kind of the best time to be out here. I personally think that probably the most pretty time to be here would be end of April, beginning of May, to see all the wildflower blooms. Because honestly, believe it or not, the desert, in my opinion, is one of the most colorful